Gee, you should see the screen come up here soon.
All right.
All good.
Let me see. It says live in 1 minute, 9 seconds.
You're live. The internet can see you now. And hear us. Oh, here we go. Episode 2 live from Jackson, Michigan. This is A to G, and with me as always is my good friend and partner, the one, the only Garrett Collier. G, how we doing, man?
I'm doing, man. It's been an interesting week since the last time we talked, so I'm excited.
Well, I'm glad to see you're still alive, buddy. After last night's debacle at Penn State, you pretty disappointed about that?
Disappointed is a little bit of an understatement. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot to say, but I also don't have much to say. You know what I mean? It's a tough thing.
Well, first, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. Again, we are live on YouTube, so go ahead and subscribe over at the M Factor channel to A to G. Also, the M Factor channel. We also host the M Factor podcast as well. So don't forget to live chat during the show. G will be taking a lot of the chats and stuff like that. So we hope to answer those questions later on in the show. But we got a fun-filled show for you today. We are a little disappointed, to say the least, after last night's game. But nonetheless, let's hop right into it. It was an eventful, very eventful week for the Michigan Wolverine basketball team. First and foremost, on Saturday, boy, what an awesome game that it was against Wisconsin. They got their redemption, 61-52 in the win. Matthews had a solid 18 points, 16 points in the second half. Teskey was 17 points, 12 rebounds. Simpson had a nice 5 assists with only 1 turnover. Again, we talked about that last week. G is assist-to-turnover ratio. Hap for Wisconsin, 18 points, 11 rebounds. So he did have a double-double in that. Michigan did lose earlier in the season to Wisconsin, so like I mentioned, that was a little redemption for him. G, anything to add from the statistical standpoint of the game?
I mean, other than Iggy being underwhelming, I thought they played great statistically. Livers with a little bit of a spark off the bench in limited minutes for him. He didn't play as many minutes as he usually does. The only negative I took away from it was still Iggy being not Iggy. He's disappeared over the last couple weeks, and that continued. But I mean, like you said, fortunately, Matthews 16 in the second half. And I thought Michigan defensively did a really good job shutting everybody but Hap down. Nobody else had a great game for Wisconsin.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, definitely.
And we managed Hap, I thought, better, especially in the second half, than we did in the first game at Cole Center.
You're spot on. That actually is one of my M factors of the game.
Yeah.
I got about 4 of them. We can go over here in a little bit, buddy. But, Michigan, boy, just another poor three-point shooting performance last night.
Surprisingly poor.
It was 23.5%. against Wisconsin.
Not
It
great.
was 27.8 the first meeting with them. So not, again, you alluded to it earlier. Iggy continues to struggle. He had 0 points in the first game against Wisconsin.
Right.
Comes right back. He did have the first bucket in the game, maybe. Or he had 2 points
He
early
scored
on,
early,
right?
yeah.
And
But he
that
only
was
finished with 6.
that was it.
Yeah.
That was pretty much it for the game, right? So yeah, as we just mentioned, we alluded to some of the M factors of the game. Definitely shutting down Happ in the second half.
Absolutely.
That was huge,
Absolutely.
huge. I mean, I think he had, Happ had 18 points total, but I think he maybe only had 6 in the second half.
Right.
Teskey did a nice job on, and then Livers also had a nice game
yeah.
on him. Livers is turning into quite a solid defensive player,
it-
actually. So
I said it last night. I know it was during a disappointing game, but I said to my dad, we were watching the game together, I said, I think Livers is my favorite player on the team. He's not my MVP, but he's my favorite.
Right.
I love Livers,
well,
man.
especially
stepped
off
up.
the bench. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? He's
exactly.
doing. We'll get to that a little later
For sure.
But I really think our thoughts on Iggy starting over Livers. It's a little
suspect.
Yeah,
at this
exactly,
point.
exactly. We got to trust the coach and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
obviously, yeah, right.
second M factor for the game was Matthews steps up big in the second half, huge in the second half. Like I said, 16 points in the second half. He pretty much won us the game.
I completely agree. Yeah,
I mean-
there were lulls in that second half where we couldn't buy a bucket, and he just seemed to pull one out. That baseline turnaround that we were talking. I watched it here with you, obviously. I said that's Kobe-esque, and it was. He just kept hitting those mid-range step back jumpers that we got so used to last year. He was hitting them in clutch moments last year, and he did in a few games earlier this year. But he was in a lull as well. He had been averaging 6 a game, I think, over the last 6, and then to come out and play in the second half the way he did. Hands down, my MVP of that game for sure.
Yep, and then beating the shot clock right there with about 45
man, that
seconds
fadeaway
left.
in the middle of the lane was
we
nice,
had a nice little watch party here at the M Factor Studios, and I'll tell you what we have about 10 of us
people here.
Yeah, 10
Yeah, it was a good
people.
time.
So pretty good time, and we were up out of our seats and stuff like
For
that.
sure, that last dunk.
And like I said, this was one of the more exciting games that we've actually watched this season, especially in basketball. That North Carolina game. Gee, I knew you were there.
I was. That was great.
You mentioned it last week how great a time it was and stuff like that, and how great.
I imagine Chrysler was a similar vibe against Wisconsin, though, with it being the
absolutely.
redemption game and a top 25 matchup this late in the season is always big.
Absolutely, and then that was basically my third M factor right there, is the fact that the crowd must have been just insane.
Yeah,
insane that game, like it was against North Carolina. I really hear it was insane, so it must have been. I can only imagine what it was like there, right? You know
right,
what I mean?
for sure. No, I have a couple friends that are students there that said the student section was great and that Chrysler was rocking, which, like I said, I didn't expect anything different. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have to ask you this though, G.
All right.
Okay, so we had a couple of, and we were all kind of on the same page on this one too, where we had a couple of calls by the ref that literally they replayed it, and the 2 calls that it should have been. How many times did that happen?
I think it happened twice. There was 2 really obvious examples where I think the first one it was either off Michigan or a foul on Wisconsin, and they called it out of bounds off Wisconsin. They gave Michigan the ball, but not the way they should have. It clearly was a foul that went uncalled, which is fine. I guess it's not fine, but whatever. It happens in games. You know what I mean? There's going to be missed calls. But then the ball clearly would go off a Michigan player, and they'd give it back to Michigan.
Yeah,
and then it happened at the other end as well, where it was either going to be a foul on, I think it was Livers fouled somebody, and then it clearly went out of bounds off Wisconsin, but they gave Wisconsin an inbound off of an out of bounds. Like, there were 3 possibilities, and the one that didn't happen is the one that got called both times.
Exactly.
It was so
exactly.
strange.
And we were basically here, like, we just throw our hands up and we're like, what the heck's going on here?
Right.
They had 3 choices, right?
Right.
This, and then they chose this, which was not even a choice. Yeah, exactly. Not even a choice. So that was kind of my fourth M factor of the game, was the fact that there was a lot of questionable calls, and then a lot of calls that didn't even exist. Why were they even called like that and stuff like that? Right. So your take on the Wisconsin game then, G, overall?
Overall, it was a much needed win. It was a huge performance. Everybody but Iggy played great, and that's becoming a recurring theme. But yeah, I was riding high coming into this week. I was thinking we were going to have a great time today. I was thinking going to be all positive vibes in the podcast, and then last night happened.
Yep. Oh, jeez, I really don't even want to go into this next topic, but we have to. We are unbiased in a win or a loss because actually losses give us a little more to talk about, don't they?
That's true. That's very true.
So for those of you that didn't watch the game last night, and you could probably tell from our
demeanor.
A little disappointment going on, shed a tear and stuff like that. But it really was. I mean, it was frustrating. But let me just go over the stats real quick here. They lose to Penn State. Apparently, they missed even going to Penn State. They missed the bus, missed the plane, whatever they take going over there. And after Purdue gives us a gift, right? Purdue goes into Maryland,
Maryland gave
into
us
Maryland,
great performance.
And Maryland gives us a gift, right? Maryland just had a great performance. They got a couple great freshmen there.
They do.
They're gonna
be
be
tough.
tough.
Some good bigs too.
Be tough this Saturday. We'll go over that in a little bit, but they'll be tough this Saturday. And after they give us the sole possession of first place in the Big Ten, what do? We go out and lay a goose egg Penn State. We lose 75-69, but it was not even that close. I know many people just turned it off in the last two minutes. It was 40-27 at halftime, folks. We'll get into the Beeline story here in a little bit. But it was 40-27 at halftime, and then
43-27 to start the second half.
To start the second half without even anyone having a possession and stuff like that. Just ridiculous. The only reason it ended that close was because Penn State tried to give us the game. All of a sudden, we started full court press. Weird. It's almost like we should probably be doing that more often in the game. It's, again, not to question you, Coach, but why in the world would they wait so long to start full court pressing in these games?
I mean, I didn't have a problem with the second half defense. I had a problem with the first half defense more so. My biggest problem was how flat they looked in the first half. Like you said, like they missed the plane or something. I think this was a prototypical trap game, right? You come off a big home win against a ranked team in Wisconsin.
You're spot on.
You got Maryland Saturday, a tough team, a top 25 team now, a tough, this is your prototypical, they're last in the Big Ten. And I've never known a Beeline team for overlooking any opponent, whether it be Michigan State or whether it be Norfolk State. It doesn't seem to matter who we play. Michigan seems to come in prepared, right? And I don't know if it was a lack of preparation or just a lack of enthusiasm, but Teske looked lost defensively for the first time all year in that first half. Iggy was awful again. It just... Even down the stretch when they were trying to mount that rally, Xavier made a couple uncharacteristic turnovers, and I was like,
actually, he had 4 assists to 6 turnovers.
That's so out of
the most he's had in a game this year. Exactly.
Last week we touched on how consistent he's been. He's got one of the best assist to turnover ratios in the country.
Mr. Reliable,
and he played great again. He showed that we were right against Wisconsin, and then last night against Penn State, he struggled. Poole couldn't really get going till late in the second. Charles didn't get going till the second, really. Again, Livers a lone bright spot. Played pretty well off the bench. Gave some good minutes.
Matthews played well.
Matthews did play well in the second half.
The second half shines.
There was a time we cut it to 4 in the second, and I was like, all right, it's going to be ugly, but we're going to pull it out. And then that kid hit his 5th 3 of the night, a contested one, and I was like, that's it. I was like, it's over. There's no way back from that. It was just, and then, I mean, again, I'm not blaming it on officiating. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm about to say. It was very clearly Michigan deserved to lose that game, but that uncalled double dribble when Michigan had cut it to 6 really hurt. It was a very lackluster performance defensively in the first half.
I totally agree. It was, first of all, so that stadium holds, or that arena holds about 16,000 people.
There's about 16 there.
Oh my goodness. We actually looked at the attendance, and I think this was generous. They said they had about 9,000
No
people
way.
there. I mean, think about it, G. That is half the arena. Half the arena was blacked out on the top. The top bowl was actually blacked out, and then there were maybe fans halfway up in the first level.
There's no way there was 9,000. It was fun. So again, I was watching Hoop last night with my dad during the game, and we were talking about Livers. And then at one point, he said all these students should be, when Penn State went up 16. He's like, all these kids should be calling their friends, being like, "Yo, we're about to storm the court, beat the number, come in here." And it looked like they did. They had a bunch of people storm the court at the end of the game, but they did.
I think there's probably they didn't have school. They didn't have class yesterday.
Right? Do you know why? I heard that.
I heard the storm. There's some winter. Apparently, they can't play in the snow in Penn State. Apparently, even though you're indoors. Come on, guys. Good call, G. Good call. So some other storylines from the game. We did allude to it. Matthews with a decent game and not a decent overall game, but definitely a great second half.
Right.
Which he's been doing a lot of. He had 6 rebounds, so that was good. Yeah. Poole had 17 points, but he's 1 of 8 from 3-point land.
He can't find a shot right now from deep.
1 of 8.
It's so out of character for him. And This is something I talked about, was that the misses aren't consistent. It's not like he's just coming up short on a bunch of threes, or they're all left, or they're all whatever.
Exactly.
They're sporadically off target, which is so out of character of him.
Let's see. He airballed one.
Yeah. That was bad.
Well, I guess it drew the backboard, like the right side of the backboard.
Yeah.
I don't know. They weren't the dozens of fans there weren't chanting airball, so I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't know, but yeah, 1 of 8, and Michigan a little better shooting from 3-point line, 35% last night. However, a lot of that was garbage threes at the end there.
When they cut it to 4 with a minute, I'm like, they're gonna. I was like, it's gonna be a miracle again. I always, they get my hopes up, man. They do.
I know, it's so frustrating. I was throwing pillows and just punching the couches and stuff over here. Oh, I was upset. I was
paying more attention to Duke Louisville than I was.
Like you mentioned earlier, I was so hyped to get to this today, and
this
now
is gonna be a great episode. Just happy.
First place, folks. We could have been in first place outright.
Alone.
Thank you, Maryland.
Yeah.
And then thank you, Michigan, for just letting us down.
Yep.
So, and then for Penn State, Lamar Stevens was unstoppable in the first half.
That's another thing, is I don't want to take any. I mean, they had a great game plan when they came
They
in.
did.
Their
They
offense was great. Stevens played out of his gourd all night long, and every time. That's another thing, is every time Michigan would cut it to 4 or 6, Penn State had an answer.
Yep.
And so props to them. They played great.
And the announcers alluded to it too. Their game plan of playing, like, they went with a small lineup and stuff like that.
Make
the small
Teskey
lineup
work defensively.
That stupid half court press that they have, which would
Three-quarter court thing. Yeah.
I mean, it shoots 7 seconds off the shot clock every time. I mean, not to say that we were rushed, but
there was a lot of possessions where Michigan didn't get into their set till 13, 14 to shoot. Yeah.
And then guess what? We're stuck with one-on-one moves. And
right.
that is not our offense. I know
not
it looks, folks. I know it looks like our Beeline's offense, but that is not the offense.
This year, it's
what I mean?
Slow developing
it really
offense
has.
For sure.
And we kind of talked about this before the show. Boy, if they are down, it is going to be very, very tough for them to come back with that sort of offense. They need to jump out quick, like they did, like they did against Indiana, like they did against UNC. Get on that huge run and really, really get at it. You know what I mean? It's really. Folks, if you didn't watch it, don't bother replaying it or anything like that.
If you didn't watch it, don't.
We apologize for bringing up the stats and stuff like that, but there were some more storylines in the game. Beeline decided to go off at the end of the first half. Now, this was rightfully so. Basically, if you didn't see it, Xavier Simpson got clipped in the face from an elbow on a moving screen. It was a moving screen outright, so it was a no call. The officiating was suspect yet again. I'll get to a nice little stat on that here in a bit, but it was a moving screen. I'm not biased against that. It was a terrible no call. Penn State scored. Penn State was killing us at the time, so a lot of things were going wrong. But Beeline all of a sudden decides to go after the ref. And what did you say? What did you say, G? How long has it been since he's been tossed out of a game?
Yeah, I looked into it. The last time he was tossed out of a game was 1979.
Unbelievable.
Literally 40 years ago.
I mean, think about it. The man is in his 70s, right?
I have watched probably 90% of the games he's coached at Michigan, and that I've never seen him like that.
Well,
ever. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting there was a time and I just don't remember, but that is the only time I've ever. Every coach is going to get on refs at some point. That's totally understood. Yep. Especially at the Division I level, they're giving a little bit of leeway.
Beeline.
Except for Beeline. He never. I mean, he'll get red in the face,
and
you'll see him, but he'll put his hand over his mouth and he'll talk to him real calm.
Sure.
I've never seen him screaming, and he was pointing.
The assistant had to hold him back.
Yeah, Sadi was grabbing him and pushing him back
unbelievable
the whole time.
Unbelievable. Yeah, I was amazed, but I was really amazed that they tossed him. Okay, a technical foul, I can understand that. So if you didn't see it, he got a tech, and then the one ref started warning him. Then they both kind of both refs kind of walked back to the scorer's table. Yep. Beeline all of a sudden said something. It doesn't even look like he was that upset at that point.
It looked like he was starting to calm down.
Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, both the refs turn around and give him the old T, and then basically toss him out of there.
He has to have said something outrageous. That's
maybe a cuss word. Do you think Beeline cusses?
But every other coach in the country does.
Folks, we're going to take a poll on that. Do you think John Beeline cusses at all during a game?
Probably not.
I mean, I don't know. You just can't picture him throwing out F-bombs and stuff like that.
I really can't.
However, that being said, they came out in the second half and they played decent. Yeah. Not as well as they could have. It's been a terrible game overall. But
I was really interested. I tweeted about it, and I didn't know if my dad actually brought this up as well. He said, does he get to coach at halftime?
That's a good
And I was
question.
like, that's a great question. So he addressed it. I watched the post-game press conference. He addressed it. He was in the locker room at halftime. He said, Sadie Washington, the longest tenured assistant, is
Okay.
going to be the head coach. He said, this is the game plan. This is what we need to do differently.
Oh, so okay.
Rah, go out there and do your thing, And then
Question
he said,
answered then,
He
huh?
said he had to sit in the locker room and watch the game on the TV for the second half, which he said was terrible.
Oh, I bet. Especially during that comeback at the end.
Well, and here's what the announcers kept saying. Do you think he was trying to light a fire under his team, getting after the refs like that? And if that was his plan, that's totally fair. I get that. They needed something. But the thing that struck me a little bit odd was that moving screen had no impact on how bad Michigan played in that first half. So if you're truly that upset with your team and you're trying to fire them up, you can do that in the locker room without going after. Like, it's just so out of character for him.
It really, and you're absolutely right. There's other ways to do it. I'm kind of on the other side though, where I think that was a good thing. You know what I mean? I think that was a good thing. You just don't know how these
one
kids.
tech would have been all right, but getting thrown out of the game, man, like that's.
It's so uncharacteristic, though. You hit the nail on the head with that. So moving on from the Beeline thing,
Yeah.
I think it's done and over with. You know what I
Right.
mean? He'll be back. He'll be back Saturday. So
Yeah, right.
so we'll be ready to rock then. Hopefully, good Lord. But another thing we alluded to: Simpson with 4 assists and 6 turnovers. 6 turnovers for Simpson, especially that one. How about that one at the end? That one at the end with
Off his foot?
Yeah, right off his foot, man.
That was painful.
Unbelievable. And that was, like I said, that was the most he's had this season in one game.
Yeah.
6 turnovers. And it sucks because literally they put our foot in our mouths from last week.
Exactly.
Right?
It makes us look like idiots. Yeah.
Exactly. Here's another stat for you, G, that you might not have looked up, but I thought it was a major, I'll say it was kind of a negative M factor of the game. 12-4 in offensive rebounds. How about that? 12 rebounds to Penn State.
Does
4
Michigan
for
ever get offensive rebounds though? Really?
Do they ever allow 12 though?
That's true.
I'm
That's
not
true.
surprised at
That's
the 4.
true.
I'm surprised at the
Okay.
12 from Penn State.
Yeah.
No, we never get
I was gonna
offensive
say Michigan's
rebounds.
always getting back on.
No.
always.
Yeah, I
It's
should have
like
underlined. I should have.
the 12
12 to 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I guess Michigan usually is a decent rebounding team at that end. That surprises me a little bit. The other thing though that I thought about was during the game, I was like, man, I remember the game earlier this year against Penn State at home being close, later than it should have been close. So I looked it up. Michigan was only up 8 with 6.5 to go in that game at home. It's not like, and the announcers kept saying this last night too, that Penn State has lost 11 games by single digits.
Right.
And I get that that's a loss is a loss. Whatever, you lose by a bucket, it's still a loss at the end of the day. But Penn State's a competitive team, and I think they probably
it showed.
and they clearly had a decent game plan, right, going into Michigan, who was ranked number 2 at the time, undefeated, and only lost by 13 the first time.
Yep.
And it was a competitive game.
At Chrysler.
I think they probably learned a lot from that and just came in with a great game plan. And so credit to Penn State. We did get one comment. They said, "Why did Teskey not get benched in the first half yesterday?" And do you want to take that? I have my thoughts as to why.
My only thought is it's very tough to see. So one of our buddies actually brought this up for Iggy. I brought it up last Saturday for Iggy.
Yeah.
Right. I said we gotta bench this guy.
When you have Livers playing the way he's playing,
You bench. I would have to agree. It's the same question for me. You don't bench Teskey simply because he did start to play a lot better defensively in the second half against Stevens. You know what I mean? Because Stevens was owning them in the first half.
Yeah, Stevens played great.
He was owning them.
Right. I think.
So go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, G.
I think the primary reason you can't afford to bench John Teskey is because you have no depth. I like Austin Davis. I really like Brandon Johns for the future. But right now, there's not another big on the team who can have the impact that Teskey can if you can get it. And I think Beeline probably thought, all right, at the under 12, I'll grab him and I'll say this and that, and this is what you need to change. And then at the under 8 timeout, he said, I'll grab him and say this. And it wasn't getting through last night. But yeah, I just don't think you can afford to bench a player when if Xavier's struggling, you can put Brooks in for a few minutes and get decent guard play. If Iggy or Charles are struggling, you can throw Livers in and talk to him and get decent wing play. But
agreed.
There's no depth behind Teskey. I don't think.
You just don't know with these young kids nowadays. Are they going to take it personally? You know what I mean? Do you destroy his confidence if you take him out of the game at that point?
Yeah, I mean, look at Izzo and Nick Ward. Well, I mean, we're going to touch on the Michigan State theme more,
Yep,
but Izzo got real
and your
hard.
boy Goins
was real hard on Nick Ward. Goins came in, played good, but then Ward came back, and Ward has had arguably the best week of his season these past 2 games. He's been playing great. So
yeah, we will get into that.
There are kids that, like you said, that are going to respond positively, and then kids that are going to, wilt under that kind of pressure.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah, you just don't bench. You can't bench them. One, you have no one to back him up.
Right.
Or you go with Iggy and Livers, a much smaller
Play tiny,
lineup, right?
which-
A much smaller lineup, which kind of worked last
I
night.
don't
It
know.
worked at the end there, but again, whatever. The whole from coaching all the way down to the water boy, it was a terrible, terrible game
was
for
not a good
Michigan.
one.
So the M factors I have for that, we'll just go over. We'll brush on those quickly.
Yeah.
But Beeline getting tossed obviously was a negative. That actually turned into a positive in my opinion. Maybe didn't need to get tossed like G says, but at the same time, it really does help. Matthews was the only player for Michigan last night, and he only showed up in the second half. PSU, Penn State was terrible at the end. That was the only reason the score.
Yep.
They were giving us the game. They were missing their free throws. They were turning the ball over.
Yep.
Some of that was because of our full court press, but other than that, just terrible. And then suspect officiating again. It was inconsistent all game, and that we don't forget we said inconsistent against Wisconsin, and they won that game.
Yep.
So we're not. I'm not
blaming
not,
on
not
it
trying
at
to be
all. Not at
biased
all.
and stuff like that. But yeah, any other M factors you have from the game, G?
No, I mean, not in particular. I think a lot of it came down to how uncharacteristically out of it Teskey was, how flat they came out as a team, but in particular Teskey. And then, so like you said, the uncharacteristic turnovers out of Xavier. I think those two were the biggest for me.
Yeah, unbelievable. So we're yeah, as G just mentioned, we'll talk a little bit about Michigan State here, and
Great week for them.
It really was. That's hence the caption there. Now they did beat Minnesota or Wisconsin last night, but let's start off with the actual weekend. They great win over Minnesota, 79-55. There you go. You also mentioned this. G Ward, 22 points, 9 rebounds, and my boy McQuaid, McQuaid, aka Michael Sarah, with 18 points and 8 assists. He was 4 of 6 from 3-point land.
Yep.
And let's not forget, MSU had 3 straight losses going into that game. So,
well, and that's an interesting thing about that one was Kenny Goins, no points, 1 rebound in a game that they win by 24.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good minutes off the bench from Arns and Tillman. Obviously, they have a thing that they have at those. Well, I guess Arns isn't a big, but he can play the 3-4, and then Tillman plays 4-5. They've got some depth at those positions. Even Kith here, I believe is how you say it. We're watching. We're like, who's this kid? He wasn't just coming in to be a body though. I think he had 8 points. I mean, he played well off the deep bench for Michigan State in that one. So
yeah, and yeah, it's weird how Goins just he was non-existent that game,
but it didn't hurt him.
Didn't hurt him at all. Actually, one of the better games they played this year.
Exactly.
Sadly,
yeah.
But then they head in yesterday to Wisconsin.
Right.
Oh boy, I thought they were going to lose this one.
Did you?
Oh
okay.
yeah, I had Wisconsin in this one. I didn't have them by much, but I thought Wisconsin, after the loss at Michigan,
would respond well.
The friendly confines of the Kohl Center.
Dude, it's hard to win there. It's real tough to win there.
And State ends up pulling it out. Now, it was close until the end, but they pull it out 67-59.
And
Winston
who hit the big shot to give him some separation? Kenny Goins from 3, man.
Homeboy Goins, man.
I'm telling you.
He was 3 of 6 from 3-point land. He did have 12 points for the Sparty.
He's doing the thing.
Winston had a great game, 23 points, 6 assists.
I feel like we say that after every Michigan State game, pretty much. Outside of the Illinois game, pretty much every game.
What do you think? Maybe outside of all 3 of their losses.
Even in I think he played well against Indiana and got no help.
The reason I say that is because we're looking at the big stats, right? Those turnovers. Turnovers all 3 games. Those turnovers all 3 games were just terrible. But Michigan State was 41% from 3-point land last night. That helps. Almost 50% shooting from 3-point land.
Yeah.
Not going to lose
many games like that.
Yeah. Send some of that Michigan's way because they are struggling from 3-point land. So MSU moves to 20-5 with 3 losses in the Big Ten.
Yep.
I was okay with that after the game. And again, Michigan, goose eggs, folks. Goose eggs. What do you got for Michigan State, buddy?
I think the most important, to me, the most important 2 takeaways are, 1, we questioned last week who's going to be the third option, right? Who's going to play third fiddle to Ward and Cassius, which Ward solidified himself as that second guy this week. Great week, 20-plus points, good rebounding in both games, good defense on Happ, I thought. But McQuaid and Goins both showed they're capable of being that third guy, which
McQuaid, baby.
Which terrifies me that they might be 4 or 5 scorers deep now. And the second takeaway is Izzo has a habit of rounding these teams into good late season teams, right? And every year, whether they've got top 5 recruits or whether they've got a lot of veterans. They seem to find a way to win games in February, March, and occasionally in April.
Occasionally, folks.
I hopefully not anytime soon. But I've
been struggling.
But it is starting to look like that's what's happening this year, right? They had that 3-game skid, and now all of a sudden they turn around with arguably their best game of the year against Minnesota, and then their biggest win of the year so far, I would say, against Wisconsin.
Now I'm hoping it was kind of similar last year until they hit that roadblock, Michigan at home, and I think that turned Michigan's season around when it was at Breslin.
Yeah.
And geez, we only had one loss in there, and that was at Nebraska. Remember that?
Yeah.
I believe we lost at Northwestern too, right? Which was kind of a no. Oh, it was. Was
that was 2 years ago?
2 years ago, that last second full court.
Yeah, 2
okay.
years ago.
I apologize. So yeah, Michigan State. Hap did have 20 for Wisconsin last night. He scored. What was it?
Who's that?
Hap.
Hap, yeah, he played well last night. He scored his 2,000th
There we
point
go,
to join that 2,000, 1,000 club.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
got a comment. I guess we obviously didn't watch the Minnesota game that closely. As I guess Goins was injured in the first half and tried to come back and shouldn't have. That's why
we appreciate that. Whoever sent that.
That was the old Jeff Collier, of course, the biggest State fan we know, of course.
Thanks, Collier. Appreciate it.
But yeah, I think the State team is starting to look really dangerous. Outside of the Michigan State games, they have a pretty easy schedule down the stretch as well. So
yep. I agree. We'll get into that. Actually, we'll head into our next topic then, G, and that is exactly what we were just talking about. Some other big games in the Big Ten. Or Maryland, again, Maryland gave Michigan a gift, but Maryland beats Purdue, giving Purdue their third loss in the conference. They beat them 70-56. The race in the Big Ten, obviously, now is Michigan, Purdue, MSU, which we all know, with 3 losses.
Wisconsin and Maryland probably out of it, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Remember you mentioned last week how you said it's looking like maybe 5 or 6 losses could win the Big Ten?
Yeah.
Number 1 has 3 losses. They're all tied with 3 now.
Yep.
Think about it. You get easily Michigan State, easily Purdue could all have another loss. Actually, not easily Purdue. Purdue has the easiest road.
I did want to touch on that a little bit. Yes, Purdue has of the top 3, Purdue hands down has the easiest schedule the rest of the way, just because Michigan and Michigan State still have to play each other twice. Purdue doesn't play another ranked team.
Right.
Do you think Purdue can run the table?
I do. I really do.
I don't. I think the Big Ten is too. The talent of the Big Ten is so much deeper than, say, the ACC or the Big 12 or the SEC. I think those bottom teams. I mean, Michigan State loses to Illinois. Michigan loses to Penn State. Anybody can beat anybody on any night in this league, and I think that one of these road games Purdue has left, they're going to slip up. I really do. I don't see them running the table.
You're not wrong, obviously, in that aspect. You're not wrong. But after last night I thought was Purdue's biggest game.
Remaining test, yeah.
And I think because Purdue gets Penn State next at home, though. Purdue gets Penn State at home. But I just see Purdue as playing, they're playing the lower tier of the Big Ten, and most of those games are at home, as we alluded to last week. But, yeah, I could say that they run the table. I really think that Purdue could. I'll give them one more loss.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I don't think they'll lose 2 more. I think 1 more is my guess.
But there you go, G. You're pretty close to your prediction of
5. Yeah, it'll
5
be 4
losses. Yeah. I mean, who would have thought that at the beginning of the season, especially at the beginning of the Big Ten season, where you had Michigan and Michigan State just dominating
looking
the
like
league.
1 or 2 losses might win the league.
Exactly. You had those 2 teams that literally set themselves apart from everyone else.
Right.
And all to just dwindle down to this. It always does, folks. That's the glory of NCAA basketball, right? Yeah. So other big games, this weekend, Duke beat Virginia again.
I'm telling y'all, Duke is the best team in the country, in my opinion.
Ooh, I thought you were going to go with a little Tennessee action. I know how you like your Volunteers, buddy.
They look good tonight.
Duke. For those of you that didn't see, any of you sports fans that didn't see, Duke came back from a 23-point deficit.
You know what? My takeaway from that game is this season means a lot to Zion. I think a lot of these one and done guys come in and they want to play good, but like they have this guaranteed lottery pick, right? So they're like, if we win the whole thing, we win the whole thing. If not,
I would assume their whole starting lineup is pretty much one and done. So
exactly. But I think Zion proved last night with how much. I mean, did you see him after? He was so fired up. And he played out of his gourd in that comeback. He stepped up defensively, didn't stop turning the ball over. He played great. I think this season means a lot more to him and Barrett than most one-and-done guys.
I wouldn't disagree with that at all. I think they're playing with so much intensity, and that's what those guys are, right? Zion, all season. Well, how about that block on Saturday? That was awesome. I wish we could show.
It makes me never want to go in a gym and shoot a three-pointer again because I'm afraid that's going to happen.
End up in the rafters, you know what I mean? Well, for those of you, I would love to be able to show you a clip and stuff like that. Sooner or later, we'll get some
sure.
some clips and stuff like that. I think that'll be fun, a nice addition to the show and stuff like that. So other scores from around the league. So yeah, Duke escapes from Louisville.
Yep.
That could have been a huge loss for Duke. Virginia beats UNC on Monday.
Yeah.
It was kind of a
not really surprising.
It was close late, but then
it's just I think there's a group of 5 or 6 teams at the top, and I think North Carolina's in that next group, in my opinion.
Would you put Michigan there
in the top group right now?
No.
I'd have Michigan in that second group.
Right,
yeah,
the second
kind of
group
behind the Dukes, the
that's
Tennessees,
what I
the
meant.
maybe whatever. But yeah,
and then Tennessee beat South Carolina
tonight. Yeah, they look good.
So
Interesting fact.
That's your team. I'm gonna label them as your team. Obviously, besides Michigan.
If I had to pick who's going to play in the finals right now, I would pick Tennessee and Duke. And the reason I would pick Tennessee that got even further proven tonight is they've got depth. Man, they had 5 guys score double figures. 4 of their starters. The one starter who didn't, Grant Williams, their best player, did not have double figures, and they win by 12.
I watched them earlier, and I'm starting to lean towards your side there, G. I'll tell you what. I'm gonna join your boat
bandwagon.
there. Yeah, there you go. So we're gonna start to do a little segment, which is our top seed watch, our number 1 seed watch, and that right now, in my opinion, is kind of cut and dry. Actually, Tennessee, Duke, Gonzaga, Virginia, and I'm giving Duke, even though Tennessee is the number 1 seed right now, I'm giving Duke the overall number 1 seed. At the end, when it's all said and done and Selection Sunday comes on.
So you mean
giving Duke?
Who would I pick right now, or who do I think will be it?
I'd say right now, how they're playing.
Right now, I would give Duke number 1 overall, Tennessee. So Virginia is in there for sure. Going into last night, I said that I would have said if Kentucky would have beat LSU last night, they'd have got that 4th spot, but they got hosed on an unreviewable.
So that was
goaltending call. So I would give the 4th spot to Gonzaga as well, just because of that. Had Kentucky won, last night, I would have given Kentucky that 4th spot.
Fair enough, and understandable that it was. What a play though! What a play! And come on, college basketball. You have a replay for the shot clock and stuff like that. That happened because of Kentucky earlier. I heard that earlier today. They instituted you can review a shot clock violation or the end of the game clock. Because Kentucky got hosed on it a couple years ago.
Got you.
And now they added that. And now they get hosed on a goaltending basically,
which will probably
interference.
be the next review.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. And Calipari actually made a good point at the end of the game. He's like, why? You can see it. Why can't you just say...
I've always questioned that across all sports. So let's take the NFL, for example, when we're reviewing catch, no catch, right?
Okay.
Just for example. But you see when you're replaying it that the DB hit him a half a second before the ball got there. Why can we not then go and put a penalty in as, maybe it wasn't a catch, but there was blatant pass interference that, yes, we missed. But now, because of the challenge of the catch, we've caught it. Now we're going to make the call. We want to get it right? Because that's the point of review. The point of review is to make the right call. At the end of the day, that's the only reason it was implemented. So why aren't we using it to its fullest? It doesn't make any sense.
Totally. I'm always on the fence about that because I'm still part of, we'll say the older generation. Sorry, folks. But, a lot of the older, they want human aspect a part of the game, right? And it always will be. Exactly. Well,
when you can get it right, why?
That's how it's always been.
That's totally fine. But if you can get it right, you absolutely should.
And then a lot of times they don't get review right either.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true. I've watched a lot of reviews get reviewed and they still leave it wrong.
But to your point, though, G, if that's the case, then there's the human interaction, right? There's the human interaction.
There you go.
If you don't get the reviews right, I'm curious. Maybe that's a stat to like we'll say NFL. I wonder what the percentage of reviews. Well, it doesn't matter because those are all subjective.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going to find anything like that.
You're like, well,
Pop says, how long do we want these games to last if we're going to review everything? And I get that argument. It could be okay. Then let's limit it to the last 2 minutes, just like we limit. Right now, we review who the ball went off of in the last 2 minutes in college basketball. Limit goaltending review to the last 2 minutes. Limit out of bounds. Just, you know what I mean? Like, okay, that's fair.
When it has a major impact, when it could decide the game.
Exactly.
When it could decide the game.
These game-deciding plays it's too important.
Of course, then you get into who's to say when it impacts the game the most and stuff.
Let's just make it the last 2 minutes of a single-digit game.
Right. I think it's an improvement. I would say it's an improvement, but I don't know if that's the answer again because there's people in my generation and people older that'll say, no, we don't want replay at all. Right. We want it in the hands of, because the officiating is part of the game.
It's like umpires in baseball. A lot of people are against the computer calling balls and strikes because they want that human aspect. Which I got
to give umpires credit.
That's one of the hardest officiating jobs.
And they're the most
sports.
accurate, in my opinion. They make the least amount of mistakes.
They do a great
job. At least the behind the plate.
They tend to do
Not
a great
to
job.
veer off subject, guys, but yeah, it's amazing because if they are calling balls and strikes, let's say they're calling balls that are actually strikes, they're consistent with that.
Yeah.
They call the games very, very.
That's true.
You know, in refereeing in NFL, like pass interference or refs in basketball,
Reaches
and stuff,
in basketball, hand checks.
How many times are they so inconsistent? We've seen 2 straight games for Michigan where it's been inconsistent, right?
I've been saying all season this year, this is the worst because of the new rules. I think is a lot of it. This is the worst officiated Division I basketball I've watched in my lifetime that I can remember. Is this
No
season.
kidding.
This season for sure. Yeah, I think it's terrible.
I really think the Big Ten is just garbage officiating overall. I mean, I know you've watched obviously a lot of non-conference games and stuff like that. But
Speaking of the Big Ten, back to the tournament as we were talking about our 1 seeds. How many Big Ten teams do you think are in? So here's
if we're talking right now, are we talking right now,
let's
or
say-
are we thinking? Like
We're
what do we think?
projecting end of the year. So I have obviously Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Maryland, Wisconsin, Iowa are in. Those 7 are in. My only 2 bubble teams, maybe 3, are Ohio State, maybe Indiana, maybe, and Minnesota,
Yep.
maybe.
Those are, and I'll put.
I would put. I say one of those 3 gets in. The Big Ten gets 8. That is my prediction.
I'll put Minnesota in as my dark horse. Then I agree with your
make 8?
tops. Yep,
Okay.
I agree with your top 7. I'll say Minnesota is in, simply because I think that, those guys are just too athletic to. And I understand Indiana.
Now Minnesota's got a chance to get a good win.
Michigan's
got them at Minnesota this weekend, so a big chance for Minnesota to get a quality
exactly.
win.
There you go. And that this could be a tough game.
Always
At the barn,
man.
At the barn, man.
Yep.
At the barn. So
I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
yeah,
on how many teams would be in.
I'll give Minnesota. Would you give Minnesota, or who would you give?
Of Ohio State, Minnesota, and Indiana. It's tough. I want to like Indiana because I like Romeo Langford and I like Juwan Morgan, but for some reason they're just not figuring it out. So I would, of those 3, I'd go Minnesota, but I think one of those 3 will be in, and I think there'll be 8.
Now, Indiana does have that big
Ten
win
teams.
against Michigan State too. So
if they were able to
help
win
their resume.
5 or 6 more games throughout, like, you know what I mean, win most of their games that are left, and win maybe a game or 2 in the tournament. That's always a big thing too. Is these bubble teams, how do they play in the Big Ten tournament? Can they get another win or 2 against conference opponents? So it'll be interesting. I think.
Yeah, a lot of those bubble teams, they need it. I always say this because Michigan used to be bubble team, right, folks?
Year after year, it seemed like.
I always said, if you have to play the opening day, you need at least 2 wins.
Yep.
My theory on Michigan was always, okay,
Get to
you
the
finish December before they had conference games in December.
Right.
I said, get your 10 wins,
get
10
to
and
20
2
by the end of the regular
and
season.
then get to 10 wins. Try to finish at least minimum 500 in the conference.
And
in the
win
Big
2
Ten,
games in the Big Ten
and then
tournament.
2 games in the
Yeah,
Big Ten
that's a
tournament.
good rule.
Give you a
That's a
solid,
good
21, 22 victories. I always thought that was enough for Michigan anyway. 'Cause
Right.
The name does help. I'm not going to lie. It does help.
It does with all those big schools.
Well, they bring people to the games. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They bring people to games. So we're going to veer off college
We're gonna get fired
basketball
up. I'm gonna get
now.
fired up in a minute when we talk about this. I'm just letting everybody know.
Well, hold on. This is okay. So yeah, G might have a little different opinion on this.
Oh,
but,
boy. All right, you go
I'm
first.
sure he does. But if you didn't hear, Georgia transfer Justin Fields, who was a very highly touted quarterback.
I read this. He's the highest rated. Now that he's an Ohio State player, he's the highest rated recruit they've ever had to touch the field for them.
It's so ridiculous. I was just gonna say the fact that he hasn't proven himself at all. He couldn't. He couldn't
didn't
beat
play
out
bad
Brom.
last
He
year.
can't beat out Brom in Georgia.
But Fromm.
Sorry.
But I mean, I think that has a lot more to do with the fact that he took him to the title than that he couldn't beat him out. I think that Kirby wanted to give him. I think he felt that Fromm was due the job if he was competent and as good as Fields. And I think they're probably as good as one another in that he decided to go with a vet. That's my opinion, though. I could be wrong.
Fair enough.
I could absolutely be wrong. I didn't talk to Kirby Smart. You know what I mean? I don't know that that's what happened. But
So Fields transferred to OSU, Ohio State. What was it, a month ago or so, month and a half,
about
that. And he also had Oklahoma in mind, which would have been a great fit for him, I feel.
I thought Kelly Bryant should have gone to Oklahoma.
Right.
The kid
Yeah.
from Clemson.
Yeah. He was another one too. But yeah, so he was granted eligibility literally a week or so. Well, it was a couple of weeks after he actually
a couple days
transferred.
ago. Yeah. It
Now,
was quick. It was a quick process.
My issue with that, and I'll get into how I feel about transfers and stuff like that. My issue is that here's Ohio State's argument of Shea Patterson, right? Ohio State fans are always going to bring up Shea Patterson, Shea Patterson, Shea Patterson. Well, let's not forget how long and the tedious process that it took Shea Patterson to become eligible to play quarterback for the Wolverines this last season. It took him multiple letters, hearings, and just hassles, after he transferred from Ole Miss because of the sanctions that were imposed on that school. Fields, there's kind of a nasty story that I don't want to get into about how why he wanted to transfer from Georgia.
Because of the baseball player and the
exactly, exactly. But also, I don't think he wasn't going to start. Now that kind of leads into my next thing is I have a major problem with the whole system of transferring.
Okay.
And maybe I'm on the other side of you on this, G, but if a player wants to transfer, I say go for it. He should not have to sit. Coaches transfer.
Really? Okay.
Other students transfer. It is instantaneous. I just don't like, the only reason I don't like this is because of the hassle that they gave Shea Patterson for it, for a much better reason for transferring. They weren't going to they couldn't go to a bowl game at Ole Miss. They couldn't go to a bowl game. There were scholarship taken away, so he wasn't going to get a better team, basically. And then you have Justin Fields, who transfers right to OSU, and
to basically just be handed a starting job.
Nothing. Yeah, exactly. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess you can play this year, simply because it was a nasty reason. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's actually confirmed, but it sounds like it has been.
Well, I mean, the kid was kicked off the baseball team,
okay.
So I would assume that it was looked into and it was factual.
And,
what had happened.
And I don't want to get into all that, but I do have a major problem with kids having to. You're putting their futures on the line when they transfer and they have to sit out a season. Mm-hmm. I can't stand that. I think it is. You can argue scholarships and stuff. These universities don't own these kids. A scholarship is not a true contract, if you want to say. It
can't be considered such. Right?
Exactly. Don't get me wrong. It's still free money. But these kids that are transferring and that are good enough to transfer and play at another school, they're going to be great players or good players at least. They're at least going to make the draft. Try to make the NFL and stuff like that.
So your only issue with the entire thing is that Shea was given the runaround by the NCAA last year and that Fields was not this year. That's kind of where your gripe is? Okay.
And because I'm also on the other side, I feel Justin Fields is fine. I feel that situation is fine. He transfers. Okay. Let him play. Let him play. Shea Patterson transferred. The whole drawn out process. That was my beef with it. You know what I mean? They weren't comparing them apples to apples when, in my opinion, Shea Patterson had a much more unfair situation.
Valid reason to be leaving.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong. Let's not downplay Fields' reason for leaving. But
my thing with Fields' reason is I'm not, what the kid said to him and did was completely wrong. Absolutely understand Fields wanting to be out of that situation. However, you're going to have idiots wherever you go in life. My mom taught me that when I was about 5 years old. You're not going to avoid things like that wherever you go. I don't care if you're in Georgia. I don't care if you're in Ohio. I don't care if you're in Michigan. I don't care if you're in Alaska.
You're spot on.
You're not going to avoid idiots wherever you're at, right? So that's kind of a silly reason. Because here's the thing. Everybody knows that's not why you left the school, right? You left the school because Fromm beat you out and you want to go start now. You don't want to have to be a junior before you get to start because your plan is to leave for the NFL after your junior year.
Yep.
And that in itself is fine with me. If you want to transfer, the rules allow you to do so, right? So I have no problem with Justin Fields wanting out of Georgia. I would want out if I was the number one recruit in the country and couldn't start as well. However, the ripple effect that this caused in Tate Martell having to try to find another job, because again, Tate Martell was a highly recruited guy at a Bishop Gorman, a high school powerhouse. Basically, they said, hey, when Haskins gets out of here, because he's probably going to get out of here because he's going to play great, we're going to turn the reins over to you. Now, Martell's in Miami, costing some other kid his job in Miami, right? Again, it's not a job, but his starting position. So that bothers me a little bit for Tate Martell and for whatever kid is now not going to get to play in Miami. Secondly, I completely agree that the treatment of these two players, let's compare Shea and Justin for a second, is totally it's unacceptable the way that Patterson was treated compared to Fields, right? It took him nearly 9 months to complete the process of transferring from Ole Miss to Michigan and being granted eligibility in a situation where the NCAA's rules are very clear. If a university was misleading in their recruitment of an athlete, that player is to be granted immediate eligibility in another school. It happened when SMU got the death penalty in the 80s. It happened at Miami when they got sanctioned. It's happened at Ohio State before. It's happened dozens of times in the history of the NCAA. So why was Patterson given so much trouble to come to Michigan? Right?
I'm right there with you.
And
you know what I mean?
So let's say that's the example the NCAA is going to set then. Let's just say like that's what players have to go through. If you want to transfer, you're going to be given the runaround. That's fine, but then it needs to be consistent. Why was Fields not given that treatment? Why was Fields' process rushed through in a matter of weeks, whereas Patterson's took months?
Stick to one rule or the other.
Exactly.
Right?
If you want to,
or apples to apples.
If
right?
if you want the process to be expedited and only take a few weeks, that's fine. That's totally fair, but then it needs to be consistent. Patterson shouldn't have been given the treatment he was given, or vice versa. If you want to discourage this free agency of sorts that's going on in college football, give players a 9-month process and make it difficult for them, but then do that to everyone, not just certain individuals. That's where I stand on it.
Absolutely.
I don't think you should be able to get beat out and just jump to another school and get a starting job right away. I don't. I think that's silly. I think there should. I think it should be back to the days of. I shouldn't say like it was that long ago. It was a few years ago when the only reason you could transfer was because you were misled or you were going to sit out a year. One or the other. If you want to sit out a year and transfer, leave whenever you want. That's totally fine with me. But if you want to play now, there better have been an atrocity committed by the university that you were going to. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion.
Okay, and fair enough. And I would, like I said, I'm kind of on the other side of that to where I say you should. I'm more of the give them some freedom and stuff like that. If you are a quarterback at a school and a better quarterback transfers, beat them out, beat them out. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned at the start of this segment, Justin Fields hasn't proven himself at all in college.
Absolutely.
Martell should have maybe stayed and checked it out.
Do you remember Martell tweeting when he? Fields said, "Hey, I'm probably going to transfer." Martell said something to the effect of, "Hey, don't come here and get beat out too."
Yep.
And then as soon as Fields announced he's transferring, you hear, "Oh, Tate Martell's in the transfer portal." Which okay. Can we touch on the transfer portal just for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
What the hell is the transfer portal? Is it a website? Is it a place? How does it work?
I believe it's kind of what you alluded to on the trickle effect of the transfer portal is these guys that basically you're just bouncing.
Yeah,
you're bouncing
so do
because
coaches just have access to this list of athletes that are interested in transferring, and they can talk to is it like it's to me it feels like almost a re-recruitment.
Is there collusion with the we've had to hear about that in the NBA for
a lot recently,
the last couple of weeks, right? And which has been crazy, but I really think the transfer portal is literally you could talk to these kids again,
right?
These are not binding legally, they might be, but like a binding contract is a scholarship. You can opt out of the scholarship, right? You can opt out of a scholarship.
Right.
That's what you have, unless I'm sure there's a little money from the boosters going underneath the table and stuff like that, like most places, but no big deal. I mean, I honestly, G, I think the whole thing goes away in a matter of years. So I just think it's going to be a fluid. No, you can
players
transfer.
Coming and going
whenever. You can just transfer whenever you want.
It's literally turning into like almost a free agency of sorts.
I mean, think about it. In the last 2 years, it's accelerated drastically.
Infinitely,
drastically. And I really think in the next couple years, the NCAA is just gonna be like, all right, there's no penalty for transfer.
I think it's out of control. They've already allowed it to get so far that
they've lost control on it. They've lost control on it simply because of situations like this where there's no baseline.
Right.
On
there's just every situation is so unique. With as big as college football has gotten now, there's so many different issues that players run into and sanctions that are getting handed out. There's every situation is different, and at some point they're going to have to make a decision, either A, to crack down on it, or B, to let it go. And I tend to agree with you that it'll just get let go.
I really do, and
which is fine with me. I guess I would prefer it to get tightened up personally.
Sure. You'd rather it go the other way, but
at the end of the day, as long as it's consistent.
Exactly. Make a rule and stick to it, right? Mm-hmm. Stick to your guns. I was just thinking, here's a question for you, G, and maybe name a QB that you know.
Okay.
Not that you know any of them personally, but you might. I don't know. Name a QB that you know that was a second-string quarterback in college, really had never saw the field, but was actually decent in the pros.
Oh gosh, Matt Castle.
Matt Castle's a great one.
Liner at USC, right? And then when he was the backup of the NFL for Brady, but then when Brady got hurt that one year,
that's funny. That was my pick too, folks.
He ended up being a starter for a while.
Good job, G.
That's the only one that immediately comes to mind.
G was probably like -4 when he was quarterback too. So
no,
just throwing that out there.
I remember Matt Castle. That might be, yeah, that's a good question.
So yeah, well, that being said, move on to the next topic. The next topic's actually it was a really good discussion that we had on Saturday with our buddy Veach. After the Michigan game, actually kind of during the Michigan State game and stuff like that, because who wants to watch State? But anyway,
right.
Sorry, Collier. So in the state of Michigan, we were discussing why young G over here, he really, really likes his pro sports, his NBA basketball. Would you say your NBA basketball over NFL, G?
Ooh. That's tough. I like both a lot. I think I talked about this before. I like the game of basketball better than I like the game of football, so I would probably pick like the Pistons over the Lions and the NBA over the NFL. Yeah,
okay. So it was kind of along those baselines, and the story we really got into was why is it that Michigan fans seem to love their college sports just so much, just much better, or prefer them over the pro sports in Michigan?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, well, let's face it, the United States is a football country. It's a football country. Football rules in
Absolutely.
the United States, right?
Yep.
Football rules. I don't think there's any argument about that.
No.
Sadly, guess who our pro sports team is for football? The Detroit Lions. That's right.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing against UP folks. They got the Packers. A lot of them are Green Bay Packers fans.
That's true. Yeah.
You got the west side of the state. A lot of them are Bears fans and stuff like that. So that's not to take away from them, but the majority. Well, let's face it, the majority of people live in Detroit in the state of Michigan, but at the same time,
Metro Detroit, yeah.
Exactly. So, and nothing against them, but I still feel Saturdays are more important during the season than Sundays are.
Couldn't agree more.
And the reason is, I mean, we were sitting here watching the game last Saturday, and this was a college basketball game, folks. A college basketball game,
which
and
is
we
the
were
second
stoked.
sport at Michigan.
And it was awesome.
Right.
It was awesome. We had a great time. Never ever can I remember doing that, even when the Pistons were in the World Championship.
Right.
Back in the early 2000s. Even I was alive for the Bad Boys.
Yeah.
I don't remember anything like that either. So I guess kind of the story goes of it was one of the best games I've watched all year. Including
on Saturday,
football.
the Wisconsin game, yeah.
Including football games, including football over the NFL, especially over the Lions. And, just the passion, the history that we have. We're talking Michigan Wolverines. Even I'm sure some MSU things are okay too. But at the same time, Michigan State fans, Michigan fans, they gear up for Saturdays
100%.
across the whole state. And the sad part is we've had the Lions. The Lions have been sad. We turned to Michigan football, Michigan basketball.
Yeah.
It's been in our lives longer. They've been more successful in our lives longer.
Yep.
Our families are more involved in all of that.
Yeah.
Now, I will say as a, this is nothing. I don't want to take anything away from Detroit either. Detroit is an awesome sports town.
Absolutely.
They're diehard loyal fans for obviously the Red Wings, Tigers, even the Lions. The Pistons are a little tough to get into, but I think moving them downtown is really going to help. Moving them down to Little Caesars Arena and stuff like that. But I don't know, G, from a younger person standpoint, I could really care less about NBA basketball.
Right.
I love the game of basketball probably as much as you do.
Mm-hmm.
It was my favorite sport growing up. However, just watching pro basketball is just it's tough. It's very boring to me. I enjoy the free agency
more than the regular season games.
Yeah, and like the lottery draft and stuff like that. I enjoy that. Now, don't get me wrong, the playoffs I'll tune into a little bit.
So I think the NBA just has a really interesting dynamic. I agree. If we talked about this Saturday, that if there was a game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals on, or a Final Four Michigan game, I'm watching the Michigan game every time. But I do consider myself a big NBA guy, and I think a lot of that has to do with there's these big events every year. The trade deadline just passed. That was huge this
like
year.
I mentioned, the trade deadline, or
the talk with Anthony Davis potentially going to LA or Boston in the summer or wherever. I was talking about it with dozens of people all day, every day for 5 days leading up to that trade deadline, right? And then you've got, like you've said, the playoffs will be coming. I mean, the All-Star break is this weekend, and then we've got 20-some games left till the playoffs. In my opinion, there's nothing better than NBA playoff basketball outside of March Madness if you're a basketball fan. And then,
yeah, that's tough to beat.
in my opinion, the NBA offseason is the most fun to follow of any major sport because you've got free agency,
Really?
which tends to have the most. The NBA has more, like statistically, has the most movement during free agency, as well as you've got the draft lottery, which is interesting. So I think that is something that diehard younger fans have gotten into. Is it's drama. It's like a television saga playing out, but with real people and with real sports, and with real storylines. And I think. That's something that's intriguing to people my age, maybe that could play into it. But I also think that when I was a kid, when I was 8, 9 years old, that's when those Pistons teams were great, right? That's when Chauncey and Rip and Big Ben and Rasheed and Tayshaun and McDyson, Lindsey Hunter, and the list goes on, were all playing great. And we went to the finals. We went to 5 Eastern Conference finals in a row. What was Michigan? I was a Michigan fan. What was Michigan doing in basketball at the time?
Terrible.
Well, they had all those sanctions because of Weber.
Yep.
It was the Amaker years, and it was just not
Amaker
good,
and Ellerby.
not good basketball.
Yep.
And until Beeline showed up, and really till 2 or 3 years into Beeline, the Pistons were always better than Michigan in comparison. So I think that had a lot to do with it.
You bring up a very good point, and that's why I'm kind of alluding to where in your lifetime, well, let's face it, in your lifetime, Michigan football has done almost nothing.
Yeah.
Downright nothing. Have
Yeah.
they? I mean, I feel bad for you, G. You weren't there in the glory years.
I've said this. I've watched Michigan win against Ohio. I've watched them beat Ohio State in football twice, and I'm about to be 23.
23, folks.
Yeah.
Not only is that young, that's just sad. 2 wins.
That's a lot of losses to Ohio State is what that is. That's a
It
lot
really
of
is.
losses.
It really is. But no, I tend to agree with that. The fact that the Tigers were playing really well.
They had a few.
Back-
They went to
back-
the World Series
back when-
twice.
especially when you were younger too. You know what I mean?
I loved Maglio. I had the wig
Yeah,
with like
yeah.
the curly wig. I
Yeah,
had
well,
that.
you still kind of have the hair for it, G. You still have the mag scruffy hair there. It's about time for we need to make a bet for G to get a haircut over here.
If Michigan, I'll say it on air right now. If Michigan wins the Big Ten tournament,
Ooh, that's too far away. I think. G, we need something before that.
before then, okay. If Michigan beats Michigan State in the first meeting, I keep my hair. If Michigan State beats Michigan, I gotta cut it.
Okay, I like
Is that a
that.
deal? All right. Shoot, I don't.
God, but I'm rooting for you to shave your head, man. I don't know if I like that.
So you want to say if Michigan wins, I have to cut it?
No, because you want to
But
root
then-
for
yeah, but
Michigan
I wanna root for
too.
Michigan, yeah.
So we'll think of something next week. We'll come
All
up
right.
with the
All right,
bet.
cool.
For sure. But yeah, we got to get G a haircut, folks. I'm starting a GoFundMe page, so we can head over to the local barbershop and we're talking $20, so you can leave a nice little tip and stuff like that. They'll take the shears to his head and stuff like that. But we'll think of something. But yeah, G, I really agree with you on your take on
It's too successful
just
when you're growing up.
especially exactly.
Like for you, Michigan football was a pillar of every Saturday. We're watching Michigan get a win.
Absolutely.
When you were growing up,
Myself, the whole family.
right?
We're talking
mom, dad, siblings, cousins,
cousins,
grandparents,
aunts,
everybody.
uncles,
Yeah,
friends for that reason.
Right.
I had maybe 2 buddies growing up that were Sparty fans.
okay.
2 buddies. One of them happened to be my best friend in high school, so that was
But
sad.
they weren't good then, so I think that's probably got a lot to do with it.
Exactly. They had a couple lucky wins here and there, but yeah, and they were good. You had no Michigan football team to really root for. I mean, they were decent at the end of Lloyd's run, but
Yeah, technically, if we're going to talk about in my lifetime, they won a national
Right,
championship.
yeah.
But since I've been watching football
Right.
since the John Navarre years, we're going to find a way. I'm going to bring him up in every episode. But anyway,
twice, folks. That's 2
but since
episodes
I've
now,
been
2
watching,
episodes.
they've been bad more than they've been good, I guess is a good way to put it. Whereas I had a good time watching the Pistons as a kid. I had a good time watching the Tigers as a kid. Good time watching the Wings as a kid. Lions, not so much. But it's the last, I would say, half decade really that Michigan basketball has been at the pinnacle of its. This might be the best era of Michigan basketball ever, and I think that has brought me back to watching college basketball. Like I said, I would watch college before pro any day. But I think there are a lot of people who in the area that are my age that do enjoy pro sports more than college because of that.
Sure. Yeah. I would agree with that. So kind of a good takes right there on
For sure.
exactly.
For sure.
Like I said, it was a great discussion. It was we pretty much summed it up right there.
Yeah.
So our next topic will be the weekly headlines, and just so
We've both got some, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So number
I'll let
one,
you
G,
rattle
I'll start with a couple here,
Okay.
and we'll get your opinion, and I'll just kind of weigh in on each one.
All right.
I got 3 of them for you.
Okay. I have three as
So
well.
first
Look
one.
at this.
Well, see, come on,
It's like we planned it. but we really didn't.
It's not our first rodeo. It's only our second. Yeah, exactly. So Charles Woodson was named the best defensive player in college football history in a Fox poll. Yeah. Agree or disagree? You didn't get to see him a lot? Or were you able to watch him at all?
No. Because 97 I was his last year there. I watched him
so
in the pros.
Not a lot of memories when he was 1 year old.
Watched Woodson a lot with the Packers and with the Raiders in the NFL.
Okay, yep.
Loved watching him. There's only in my life, again, I can't speak to, like, I'm sure a lot of people were going to make the argument for, like, Brian Bosworth, Oklahoma fans.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But, like, the only person that I remember ever getting that much attention was Manti Te'o at Notre Dame.
That's true. And it does, when social media comes up and stuff like that.
True.
And, you get you get much more publicity.
Right.
The later on you are.
Had plenty of time to watch, Charles Woodson highlights. I loved watching his punt return, but I don't remember ever seeking out video of him playing defense. I wanted to see him when they did put him in on offense. I wanted to see how he did. And when he played special teams, I wanted to see how he did. So I can't really
the one-handed interception, I'm sure you've
seen that against Michigan State, yeah.
And the interception in the end zone in the Rose Bowl was a big one.
Yeah, I've seen a couple plays, but, like, I haven't ever watched, like, a full game where he was playing corner on somebody's best receiver. With it being a Michigan guy, I'm happy about that.
Sure.
But the only person that I think of right away is Manti Te'o.
Okay, fair enough. And obviously, I would agree with this. In my mind, Charles Woodson is my all-time favorite player.
Oh, really?
Michigan.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's a good thing you didn't see many highlights of him on defense because you don't want to see a lot of highlights because that means normally either they're getting burnt or toasted or something like that. Charles Woodson was the only corner I've ever watched that could shut down a whole half of the field.
Okay.
That's why he could man up on anyone.
He had a 20-year NFL career.
Yeah, and how do you stay healthy that long as a DB?
He didn't miss many games.
It's unbelievable.
No, he had speaking to his NFL talent, he was great. He torched the Lions twice a year when he played for the Packers.
Of course.
When he was with the Raiders, they were
folks?
good.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. So no, I think he was a great player. I just unfortunately missed out on him at Michigan.
Yeah, that is too bad. I was just seeing what you remember to Charles Woodson there. Seawood, love you, man. I think that's a great pick.
For sure.
Obviously, that's a Fox poll, but I don't think many other people would disagree. So, Second topic we got, earlier this week, Jim Harbaugh says Tom Brady should have a statue at U of M.
Did he really?
He did. He came out and said that. What do you think of that?
No. Absolutely not.
Not even a statue like up in North Campus or anything like that?
Absolutely not.
And why is that?
Because this is going to get me in trouble with a lot of Michigan. He wasn't a great Michigan player.
Should we have a Henson statue up there?
Henson
was way better in stats.
Quarterback.
If you say John
Navarre,
Navarre,
Chad Henne. It should be Chad Henne.
I like your style, but
if we're gonna put who is the best quarterback of the last 30 years at Michigan? Chad Henne, hands down.
Or Tate Forcier.
I
Let's
love
face
Tate,
it,
man, but it was for 4 weeks. But
exactly.
No, he absolutely should not have him. The Patriots should build him his own building with 6 statues out front from different stages in his career, with a mural, with a shrine area where you can pray to Tom Brady. The Patriots absolutely should. Should Michigan? No.
Okay. Well, I would. And you know how much of a...
I love Brady.
You know how much of a Henson guy I was back in college.
Are you going to say he should?
I do, because
Why?
So we kind of alluded to this last week. Tom Brady is a Michigan man.
He is.
He's one of the best. It doesn't matter. Okay, so, Gerald Ford went to University of Michigan. There's a statue of him. He wasn't president when he was at Michigan. You know what I mean? These guys are Michigan guys. So, you're talking about the greatest quarterback of all time.
Does Desmond have a statue yet?
No, and that was kind of my rebuttal.
Charles Woodson have a statue yet?
That's exactly was my rebuttal was, I think those guys should definitely, maybe not. I think Desmond.
Does Tom Harmon have a statue yet?
He might. I don't know where. Again, it matters on placement.
My point is, if our Heisman winners don't have one, Brady shouldn't have.
Okay, that's fair enough. So, and it's hard to disagree, but I do think Tom Brady being the greatest NFL quarterback. Where did he go to college? Michigan. True. Could you imagine the recruiting too? Recruiting, it would really help with recruiting and stuff like that. But
probably. Yeah.
I mean, it also depends on placement of the statue too. I mean, we're not saying put it outside the stadium just yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, who knows? He wins another 3 more, like he probably will. You might have that.
That's true.
Discussion.
That's
so,
true. Yeah.
So third one for you, G, is Shea Patterson put out by PFF
Oh boy.
earned the highest graded quarterback in the Big Ten this last season.
No way.
Unbelievable. Obviously,
Who put that out?
Haskins at PFF is the
Is
name
that
of
that's an analytic?
Yeah. Basically,
Really?
and I would love to tell you their grading criteria. I don't really know.
I would have to look into that, but I would think Haskins was better.
I would. How can you not go with Haskins?
I would even. They didn't have a great year.
So
it's easy to argue
Haskins and
something,
then
but McSorley.
McSorley was
even?
third. I definitely think Shea had a much better year than McSorley.
Okay.
Obviously, Shea destroyed McSorley
That's
in
true.
that
That's
game.
true.
They didn't destroy each other. Obviously, both quarterbacks.
Right, but no, I get what you're saying.
But
yeah,
you know,
But no, I would.
McSorley definitely faltered at the end.
I would
of the
be interested to
season
see what Shea did that Dwayne didn't to win him that. I'm very curious what criteria that was. We should. I'd be interested to look into that.
I would agree because
Because
wait,
to me,
maybe-
Dwayne Haskins was the
maybe
best.
interceptions.
Because Dwayne was. I mean, he was a Heisman finalist, and Shea was not. So yeah,
I'm right there with you, buddy.
We'll
I
have
don't
to look
know.
into that more.
I
All
don't
right,
know,
are you,
I'm just-
are you ready for mine?
Yep, let's do it, G.
So I would like to point out, this is me. I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit here, but I'm curious for your take. Earlier
you
this
got?
week, last week, I should say, we were talking about some of the quarterback carousel that's going to go on, and we were talking about what are the Ravens going to do with Joe Flacco, and I said they are going to trade him to Miami, Jacksonville, or Denver. And what happened this morning?
He goes to Denver, folks. He goes to Denver.
I would also like to point out that's the second trade I've called in 2 weeks because the week before that, before the NBA trade deadline, I said the Sixers are going to trade Markelle Fultz for a guard. They traded him to the Magic for Simmons. I have witnesses on both. What do you think about what do you think about that though? Because
What
a
do
lot
I
of
think
people
about
that
Flacco going to
Flacco's
Denver?
Washed up that he
All
won't
right.
do anything there.
Talk about what are my take on you picking it?
No. What do you think? I just
You're
wanted
the
to pat
Tony Romo of
just
picking trades. I'll give you that. How about that,
I
buddy?
just wanted to pat myself
give
on the
that.
back. But what do you think? How do you think he'll do in Denver?
I do like it. We'll have
They've
to
got a
talk
good
to a couple.
defense.
We'll have to talk to a couple of our Denver
Oh, yeah.
Denver
You got
fans,
some Denver
Scott and
followers.
Alyssa there, to see especially what they think about it. But I'll tell you what, I like it simply because he's more of a John Elway type. Don't forget when they were really good, they could still run the heck out of the ball.
Davis,
Their defense is still fantastic. And
Oh,
Case
you
Keenum
know,
is not
yeah.
the guy. Let's face it. I don't think John Elway really ever had faith.
I don't
in,
even think he's
in
one of the
Keenum.
top 5 available. I think you've got Teddy Bridgewater's out
You're talking
there.
Keenum?
Right now. I think Bridgewater's a better option. Fitzpatrick's a better option. Tyrod Taylor's a better option
Then
than Keenum.
Oh, okay.
I think Flacco's a better option. I think it's a good trade for them.
I
really
do too. I'm 100% in on that trade. I think it actually benefits Denver. I think it makes. I think they got better. They got better today.
Okay. My second one, the Big 12, which we have not talked about in this podcast hardly at all because
The defensive juggernaut of the Big
I'm
12.
talking basketball.
Again, the defensive
Kansas-
juggernaut. No, just kidding.
Kansas
buddy.
has won 14 in a row. They are now, after last night, Kansas State beat Texas. They are 2 full games back. They're without Azubuike. They can't seem to win out. They're 1-6 or 2-6 after they beat TCU. 2-6 on the road this year. It has been 14 years since they last lost a Big 12 title. Do you think it happens this year?
No, I still think they win.
They're 2 games back. You really do?
I really do. I just think again, Kansas self. I think he's
Hope find a way to pull it out.
he's still one of the best coaches
Okay.
in the country. And let's face it, the Kansas. Do you happen to know their schedule?
I
offhand?
don't have it offhand.
Okay,
no, I
no
don't.
problem.
Nope. I'm assuming they have to play each other at least one more time, though.
Man,
And then I just wanted to quiz you because I quizzed you last week on who the Big Ten tournament. Do you know the last team to win the Big 12 other than Kansas?
Ooh,
It was in. I'll give you a hint. It was in 2004, and they were a Final Four team that year.
2004.
They were a Final Four team.
Boy, I hate to go with the obvious ones. Is it an obvious? How about this? Is it
Not super. I was surprised when I read.
Kansas State?
No, Oklahoma State.
Oh, OSU was a fun.
They
I
had
don't remember
Joey
that at
Graham
all.
and Tony Allen, who were both first-round picks in the NBA draft that year, and they went
I
to
do
the
not
Final
remember.
Four.
Oh my god, in 2004. Good lord. How old were you then, G?
8. I didn't know
years
that.
old.
I looked that up. I cheated. I came
That's all right.
prepared.
That's
I got
all
a
right.
cheat sheet.
I like the quizzes though. I mean,
so my third thing I just want to talk about. I'm assuming we're going to touch on anyways. Just previewing this week with Michigan and Michigan State. And what,
yep,
what's
yep.
going
That
on.
is
So,
that's our last
all
topic.
right. I'm gonna let you take over then.
G, I'll tell you what, Michigan, the big one on Saturday, even bigger now considering
Must win almost, right? Feels like it.
it really is. It is a must win. But yeah, Michigan, Maryland this weekend. It's a Saturday game, and after the ups and downs of this week, I'm still going with Michigan.
By how many?
I'll say Michigan by, I'm going to go, shocker, I'm going to go Michigan a close one because it's the Big Ten. Apparently we can't blow out anyone anymore. I'm going to go Michigan by 8, especially after Maryland riding high after that win against Purdue.
Okay.
So what do you got, G, for Michigan?
I think this week, my preview for the week is that we have to win both games. It's the last week of the season without a Michigan State game. So it kind of becomes important to win this week when you've got 2 games against them in your last 4. So I'm going to say I'm going to pick Michigan by 6. And I think they will trail at some point late in the second half, and they're gonna have to rally. But I think they're gonna do it. I think Charles will be good. I think he's a tough matchup for Maryland, and I think Xavier will go back to just not turning the ball over, and that'll be crucial down the stretch. And I think our defense will hold them to under 70, win by a couple.
I like it. Michigan, just to let you guys know, it is on Fox at noon on Saturday.
And then
it is at Chrysler.
Minnesota after that, at Minnesota.
Yep.
What do you think about that one?
I'm going to go, again, the Barn is a tough place to play, but
Always.
if we win on against Maryland on Saturday, I think we carry that. My prediction was wrong after that Iowa game. I didn't think we were going to play any worse the rest of the season.
Yeah.
What did we do? Played worse. So I think you guys probably want me to pick Michigan to lose because but I don't think so. I think Michigan. I picked it against after the Iowa game, saying that was a real eye opener.
Yeah.
This one was an eye opener. They were flat. They were unenthused. They were uninspired. Just nothing. And now, guess what? They got something to play for because it's a 3-way tie going in.
You almost feel like you have to win every game but one to win the conference at this point.
Exactly. And gosh, I want Michigan just to win the Big Ten season. Tournament, obviously, would have been
would be
solid.
great, but
it'd
we
be
haven't
awesome
won a Big
to
Ten
win.
title. Yeah,
I know
wow.
it'd be so awesome. So I do have Michigan. If Michigan beats Maryland, I got them beating Minnesota again. Not by much. I'm gonna say less than double digits. Another close game, another nail biter. Give us a heart attack. And what do you got, G?
I would take Michigan by a dozen in that one. Minnesota looked so bad against Michigan State, and I think again, big game at this point. You got to win every game other than one. I just think they'll be prepared. I hope. Hopefully we don't lay another egg, but I'll take Michigan by a dozen in that one.
Right, and then what do you got for? So who do you got for the Sparties?
Sparty's got OSU, and who else does Sparty play?
I know they got OSU at home, right? I got Sparty in that game
first. Yeah, by a decent amount. And then the Rutgers home next. So Sparty by 15
that better be
or
2
20.
wins for you, Sparty. You lose either of those games.
Which, again, a big week for Michigan State because they don't have another week without a Michigan game. They have to go to Indiana the week after that.
That's Assembly Hall. Assembly Hall, always a
After
tough
you already
place.
lost one?
Yep.
Yeah, no, but I got State winning handily in both of those.
Okay. Yeah, I do too. So, well, folks, that'll be all for us. G, you got anything music-wise, buddy, coming up?
Yeah, I'm busy this weekend, man. I got gigs Thursday and Friday. I'm at Poison Frog. Or tomorrow and Friday, I should say. And Saturday at the Roadhouse. We're full band. First time I've ever played in my hometown full band. So
no kidding.
Really excited about that. Got some exciting stuff going on with the Loft where I'm promoting and booking for them now too. So check out my Facebook stuff. I'm spamming the hell out of people with it right now. So
right on, but yeah, guys,
everywhere.
make sure it's really fun shows and stuff like that.
Thanks,
it's a good
man.
time. Get on out, go see G, rock on the guitar.
I'm
Really
gonna have you up for a
talented guy
song
and
soon,
stuff
don't
like
worry.
that. So, all right, guys. Well, anything else to add, G?
Man, I'm all set. I think. We're
Awesome.
straight. See
Another
you next
solid
week.
week.
I'm excited.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it again. Thanks for the live chats and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure.
We will be back next Wednesday, 9 o'clock as usual, going over the week, and we hope you guys enjoy it. Again, if you have not, please subscribe on YouTube. This one will actually be going out as a podcast as well. We'll be under the M Factor channel again, but you can expect that on iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud. So get on that if you just want to hear the audio and don't want to see our ugly mugs up here on the cameras. So thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. We'll see you next Wednesday.